Welcome back to Urban Today. We are talking to Dr. KIIZA Besigye and trying to really understand the electoral process amongst other current affairs that are going on around us. Dr. Besigye, if we can look at a bit of history, back in 2001, the second five-year term was handed to President Museveni. You went into self-imposed exile in South Africa for 5 years. I think that was when we really saw the first bold step that was made towards the NRM party. In 2005, a referendum that adopted multi-party systems was put into place, as well as the removal of term limits. In 2006, we saw you running against President Museveni. A count of 37% was the official that was given against 59% in terms of the FDC and the NRM party, President Museveni coming out as the winner. You challenged these results in the Supreme Court, and you said that they were irregularities that could not be overlooked significantly. In 2001, we saw you coming back with a significant loss of 26% as reported, and 68% going to win as President Museveni. This journey from before 2001, 2011, we now see you, some would argue, in a relatively passive role. So what we want to understand in today's discussion is the electoral process, in your opinion. Will you run in 2016? I suppose what I would like to start with is, are elections still relevant in Uganda? Are they still relevant in Africa?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I have an issue with something in your narrative, which I always hear repeated over and over by people, especially in the media. Something called self-imposed exile. Who imposes exile on others if it is not themselves?
Well, okay, you went away. We didn't see you for some years.
No, the point I'm making is there is no self-imposed exile and an exile imposed by others. Every exile is actually self-imposed. You feel threatened. It is you to make the judgment call.
We will call that a double emphasis.
Yes. No, it's not a double emphasis. It's a confusion. Because you cannot have a self. I mean, it would suggest that you could have been exiled otherwise, but you chose to impose to exile yourself. Now, the question you are raising: are elections relevant in Africa? Is a very, very critical one, because the biggest challenge in Africa has been the failure to make a transition from dictatorship to a democratic dispensation. And the dictatorships are a whole range. Just like democratic dispensations are a whole range. The main distinguishing factors between this range of dictatorship and democracy is the exercise of power. Who controls power? Either power is controlled by a narrow group of people or even an individual in a democracy, or it is controlled by the society in democracy. And where it is controlled by a small group, the tools that are used to dominate the majority is mainly terror, is mainly force. The force of arms, to make everybody to fear, and if you raise your head and you say, but this is not acceptable, they hit you, and so everybody is contained in fear. Coercion is the biggest source of power in a dictatorship. Two, it is the use of public resources by this narrow group that controls power, use of public resources to give favors, to give gifts, because nobody has access to resources in a fair way. They control the resources, and if you support them, they give you. So patronage, giving money, giving jobs at the discretion, not on merit, at the discretion of the ruler. And the other thing they use is controlling the majority in ignorance. They dominate information, control media. And so people cannot have know their rights and exchange and so on and so forth. And so these are major tools that I use. There are others, but I prefer to talk about these three. And so, in order to have a transition to a democratic dispensation, you must move the control of coercive instruments in the state to the people. As long as the coercive instruments are controlled by this narrow group, you cannot have democracy. Now in Uganda, what people don't realize, we went to the bush to challenge a dictatorship which was there. And we had, a noble, a just cause. We wanted to remove a dictatorship and hand power, remove power from them, from those guns, and hand it to the people. So we go to the bush, we fight, we took over power in 1986. Now what happened in 1986 is that all the institutions of NRM, NRA, which had fought and taken over power, all its organs and institutions became state institutions. The NRA, which was the military wing of NRM, became the National Army. The security institutions of NRM became the National Security Institutions. The policy organ of NRM, the NRC, became Parliament. The administrative institutions, the district administrators, SDAs, became the RDCs and the controller of the districts. So NRM became the state, complete with its force. Mr. Museveni has been the chairman of the High Command of NRA, the force of NRM, from 1981 to today. So that has not changed. First of all, for the first 20 years, from 1986 to 2006, this was the case both in law and in fact. In law, the NRM was the only political party.
But now that has changed.
And in fact, it hasn't changed. The point.
Look, I can understand what you're saying, but you were part of creating what we now see. You held the office of political commissar. I don't know when you were setting up those offices, you copied them from democracies. So you cannot, in a sense, excuse yourself from what we see today. Now, given the fact that you contributed by being political commissar, you were probably in charge of the dogma of the party.
Yeah, first of all, let me disabuse you of the notion you're advancing. The NRM, when it took over power, it, on its own volition, declared that it would organize a transition in 4 years. And that in these 4 years, a new democratic dispensation would have been ushered in.
Okay.
So that was 1986 to 1990. That was the period in which I was the political commissar. In fact, I was political commissar 1988 to 1990. And part of the conflicts we had that led me to leave government in 1990 was precisely the management or mismanagement of the transition.
But the government you're talking about had a pecking order for which you were also in rank. So you said you had planned to hand power back to the people, but you had ranks who was going to go first, second, third, fourth.
To go where?
Sorry?
To go
Who
where?
was to get power? Because we here, you people had a pecking order in which you were also.
Of course there were.
Which number were you?
Of course there was absolutely nothing.
Is that a myth?
Of the absolutely, totally. It's certainly not. It's not there anywhere.
It is a myth.
But it's possible that some people harbored it in their minds, and I have no way of determining what goes on in people's minds. But it was never anywhere in the NRM policies and programs which are written up today. Everybody can read them.
Actually, it is speculation. Dr. Besigye, the thing that we wanted to ask is, post the 2011 elections, we saw the campaign that is now known as Walk to Work.
Yes, you see, you actually cut me short.
Oh.
Because I was telling you that for the first 20 years, it was one-party rule.
Yes.
And NRM was completely fused with the state.
Yes.
Completely. The NRM Secretariat was a department of government.
Yes, because they had inherited a failing state.
That does not make you, the party, become the state.
Well, I understand that. The thing is, the party that came
Yes.
was to bring order. It was not a negative transition.
No,
it was actually
you see,
a positive.
You see, and this is where I think we have real problems with people not discerning where the problem lies. There is a difference between a political organization, a political party, and government. Government is for everybody. Whether you believe in the political
the
party,
is that has been rectified
whether you
with
believe
the referendum and the adoption of multi-party systems. That is in the Constitution. We see
so,
it
but
played
no,
out in
but you
elections.
were saying that it is justified under certain circumstances for a political party to be fused
No, I was
with the
trying
government.
to build context.
It's not
I
just.
was
it's
trying
not,
to build context.
Yeah, but that is a wrong context. It's not justified that a political party becomes fused with the government, and that you have a party state.
Yes.
You know, or a state party or party state.
Yes.
It's not justified.
rectified
So that
that.
was the problem up to 2006. Now, 2006, the court had already ruled that this is not a no party, as Mr. Museveni and his friends were trying to justify the NRM. The Constitutional Court said this is not a no party, this is a one party. Because when I stood up in 2001 to contest, Mr. Museveni, who had said that, and the law was saying that contest will be on individual merit, Mr. Museveni called the National Conference of NRM to endorse him. So, but that could not be individual merit. So, all this was used, and the Constitutional Court ruled that this is not a no party, this is a one party, and must be ended. Other parties must be allowed freedom. That's how the Political Parties Act came in place. The thing that I am talking about now, and that is since 2006, we are now in 2014, this 8 years. Whereas in law, that actually was supposed to change, that we should go into a multi-party dispensation. In fact, it hasn't. We still have a movement state in place.
But you have a party.
Yes. So we have a party that is now supposed to compete with the state, not with the NRM as a party. This is what I'm telling you. And that, so the military is still a military of NRM. The security institutions are still NRM security institutions. The administrative structures are still NRM administrative structures. RDCs, you see them, RDCs taking people to Rwakitura who have converted from FDC to the public officials. You know, we have now a minister for mobilization. You know, there is a whole ministry now for mobilization. We have the Chiankwanzi Political School, which was an NRM school, going on now as part of the state. So, in fact, although we were supposed to be in a multi-party dispensation, we are not. The real fact is that we are still in a military dictatorship, NRM military dictatorship. And though political parties are nominally allowed to exist, of course, they don't even function because of the terror, which I have talked about.
But they have candidates who run for office.
Yes, but that does not make it a multi-party dispensation, you know? Because what does it help to have a candidate who is, not allowed to hold meetings as he wishes, who cannot raise money because of the terror, who cannot, so the space for political opposition is very narrow, but more importantly, on the other side, there is no ruling party. It's the state. So we don't compete against NRM, we compete against RDCs, we compete against security officers, military officers. We compete against, even the Electoral Commission, which you hear of. The Electoral Commission, apart from the commissioners or the staff of the Electoral Commission, you find their intelligence people and so on and so forth. So in that kind of situation, you cannot talk about having free and fair election. And the reason is precisely the fact that NRM did not live to its promise to manage a transition, whether in the 4 years or the 10 years it lasted before the elections. No transition was actually undertaken. And the failure of that, the main failure of that, was in the Constitution itself, where we now constitutionalized this fraud called the movement system and constitutionally restricted all the other political parties and organizations.
Dr. Besigye, there's so much ground to cover, and I wish we could get some of these responses. Let me just go very quickly. Before we get to the Walk to Work campaign, one would argue that, there are bases of democratization that we've seen as theories around the world and have worked in the areas of wealth, education, resource, market economy, civil society, citizens of the intermediary, or what we call the growing business class. All these we see active in our Ugandan context. Why is it that we are so quick to rubbish the process of democratization in our country because of what you have just, explained?
Yeah, but, there are many things that, as you have said, characterize a free and democratic society. But they are linchpins of it. They are pillars of it. Yes. And the, quite obvious one is freedoms, political freedoms.
So let's talk about that. With the Walk to Work campaign, we saw you arrested over 5 times, bullets, tear gas. You were arrested and held in custody at your home, house arrest, confinement. You were blocked by police when you tried to walk into the city as a silent protest of the current, affairs that are happening in politics. You were at some point even accused of, incendiary treason. At some point you were badly hurt. Is this struggle to some degree unsatisfying and almost depressing? And having asked you that question, if you maintain that elections involving an incumbent are likely to fail, especially without electoral reforms, how do you propose that a country like Uganda grows in its democratic culture?
Well, you've mixed many things.
I have, because there's so much to cover. There's a lot.
I am available all the time. Yeah. Look, you can invite me every day, and I will be happy to be here to answer all these things.
An attempt was made.
But let me first say this: that yes, the rights, the abuse of rights that you are talking about, that I cannot walk freely even today. If I chose to walk from here today, first of all, as I sit here, I came with my whole contingent of policemen who surround me wherever I am, including my home, 24/7.
There's a good thing to that.
So they are outside your studios. If I chose to walk out of here into town, I would end up in Nagarama, in prison. So I am a political leader who is not allowed to walk. Just the basics. Who is not allowed to go and visit a market, who is not allowed to go and, that is where it starts. And, holding a meeting now is a luxury, of course, if you cannot do that. As you know, I have been arrested countless times, charged with a whole range of offenses: rape, treason, terrorism, illegal possession of guns, inciting violence, all kinds of and manner of charges. I have never, even once in my life, and I'm now 58 years, I will be 58 years in 2 months. In my entire life, I have never had to defend myself against anything. Though I have been arrested so many times. All these cases are dismissed without my need to defend myself. In other words, they are completely trumped up charges without any iota of evidence. These are the charges now, by the way, which Mr. Museveni and NRM are saying must not be bailable. So, if he gets his will, as I'm sure he will, considering what was decided in Changwan's recently, it means next time they accuse me of rape, I'll spend 1 year in prison without bail. Next time they accuse me of treason, I will spend 1 year in jail without the possibility of bail. Next time they accuse me of terrorism, all these are offenses I've been accused to, so I will live perpetually in prison. This is the democracy you are talking about. In 2006, you are saying I got 37%. Of course, you've heard what people who managed that election, including General Sejusa, have said, that actually I had 69%. And we have always known this and said this. And when we went to court, all the judges, not one, not two, all the 7 judges agreed with us that the election was not free or fair.
All right. The thing that I really want to discuss is more of that. At the same time, I also want to get into the Walk to Work campaign because it really does mirror what happened in the Arab Spring and how fundamental change can be made through people. We are speaking to Dr. KIIZA Besigye. Obviously, there is so much more that we need to discuss with him. I hope you stay with us.
This is